Kia ora and welcome to the Nichecast. We're from the Niche Cache, and we've got a website thingy-majig that you can have a jam if that's your buzz. The niche-cache.com, where we come heavy with the Aotearoa sporting yarns. I was in a nice little flow over the weekend, so I did a few observations about the New Zealand cricket resurgence and a little bit of Warriors chat. Signing Tana Boyd, and some Pacific Championship observations that I was worried could be impacted by the Sunday evening footy because I wrote it Sunday morning, and it kind of was because Shans Nickel-Clockstar decided to throw like a 20-meter cutout pass and then have a left-footed chip. So in that yarn, in that deep dive on our website about the Warriors, I was like, I like Shans Nickel-Clockstar as a frontline defender, and I think for the best combination for the Warriors is to have Shans Nickel-Clockstar at centre, then you can get Teutau Picky at fullback, and then you got the two best running wingers in the NRL, Watene Zelezniak, Roger Tuivasa Sheck. You get a bit of Ali Leotau in the other centre. That was my favourite Warriors backline. I was like, Shans Nickel-Clockstar, he's not really a half, he's a centre, I reckon. And he just decides to throw a big cutout pass and have a left foot kick, and I was like, wow, he might be a half, you know. He's got some skills in that baggy, old Shans Nickel-Clockstar. But you can read about that on our website, theniche-cache.com. We've got plenty of domestic cricket yarns. We've got the National League weekly reviews. One of them is on the website at the moment. There'll be a Flying Kiwis yarn coming up, and I did see a bit of All Whites squad chat on the website as well. So if you do love your football, you love your cricket, you love your rugby league, we've got all the yarns on our website. And if you love your basketball, we'll be chatting a bit of basketball here, and there's still some basketball yarns that you can tap in with on our website, the niche-cache.com. Yesterday was Monday, and that's where we like to set the table in our newsletter via Substack, the niche-cache.substack.com. A lot of the yarns that we spin in the podcast stem from our newsletter. That's just where we dump a whole lot of Aotearoa sporting information. We've got a bit of Rugby League Pacific Championships. We've got Blackcaps stats in Sri Lanka. We've got some Plunket Shield notes. We've got lots of football. We've got Tauihi basketball. We've got the Breakers. We've got the National League. Is this the men's or women's team of the week? This is the women's team of the week. And I assume the men's team of the week will be coming on Friday. So if you do, look at this. You've even got an all-white starting 11 featuring no players from the current squad. I'm just going to read it out because this is great. This shows the depth of Aotearoa football. You wrote Keen Sims. I assume that's a typo.
That is a typo. That should say Case Sims.
That should say Case Sims.
It was pretty late by the time I finally got around to finishing the emails. So, sometimes you play and miss and it goes through the keeper,
That's all right. Shout out to Keen Sims. He's a very keen individual. So shout out to him. And also shout out to Kees Sims. Kees Sims is the starting goalie in your all-white starting 11 featuring no players from the current squad. Also in that team, we've got Dalton Wilkins, Isaac Hughes, George Stranger, Sam Sutton, Cam Howison, Ryan Thomas, Marco Rojas, Andre de Jong, Lachlan Bayliss, and Max Mata. And you even dropped a few more. Nick Zanev, Dane Ingham, Matt Dibley Diaz, Finn Roaconchi, Jay Herdman, Oscar Van Haddam, and Alex Grieve. And one more, Ben Old, because he's injured. How about that? Aotearoa football is deep. We roll deep in the Aotearoa sporting realms, and that was a nice little nugget from our newsletter. The Monday newsletter, completely free and available via Substack, thenichecache.substack.com. If you don't want to sign up to Substack, if you're a bit like me and you don't want all these apps on your phone, you don't want the Substack app, I do copy the newsletter straight into Patreon the morning after. And Patreon's a great way to fund the Niche Cache. Big up to everyone supporting us straight up the guts via Patreon. Patreon.com/L Niche Cache. EL Niche Cache. And that is where A, you can support us, show us your appreciation for the work, and B, where we dish out the bonus podcast every Thursday. Last week we recorded the bonus podcast and it was available for everyone. We're going to go back to putting it just for the Patreon whānau on Thursday this week. So we offer the bonus podcast every week for Patreon. And C, I copy the newsletter straight into Patreon. So if you're a member of the Patreon whānau, the newsletter's right there on Patreon the morning after. The bonus podcast is there every Thursday afternoon. And most importantly, the Niche Cache sends you a big mana wave of positive energy and karma boosting for your generosity in supporting our work. But if you are a hardcore Substack type of joker, not sure how many of you are there, but if you are a hardcore Substack joker, you can upgrade your free Substack subscription to a paid Substack subscription and also access the bonus podcast every Thursday and also just support us straight up the guts. You can also make a donation through Buy Me a Coffee if you want to just make a one-off thing and you're not really tapped in with the technological platforms. Just head on over to Buy Me a Coffee, make a donation, and we will be eternally grateful for you. And we will also send you a big mana wave and a karma boost. We can't really afford to fund anyone else's mahi, so I don't expect many people around the world to fund our mahi. So your presence here and now, just having a listen, having a read, having a big up yourself, celebrate yourself, it's all good. We appreciate you being here with us and spending your time with us in supporting and celebrating Aotearoa sport. I'm gonna do the music before the mindfulness, because the music I want to highlight, and we are approaching our sporadic dump, and this is a key word, dump. Mentioned it a few minutes ago. I'm mentioning it again. We do a sporadic dump of our favorite musical projects. We love a bit of music here at the Niche Cache. Every week, we try and dish out a little playlist of our favorite jams. In the newsletter, every Monday and Friday, we each offer one song. So there's always a musical thread. My Friday tune was a new track from Lady Six. How about that one? And you had a bit of Pearl Jam in your latest newsletter. So that's the range of music that we offer. There's usually an Aotearoa flavour to the tunes, but not always. The project that I have been absolutely pumping, because it's not just one project, there's a couple of them. I've been pumping it, and I've also been dumping it, because it is the god Fahim, the dump god himself. He has released 3 projects with Nicholas Craven, who is a hip-hop producer from Canada. And he goes hard with the samples. He's got some crazy samples. And I thought it was like, okay, there's a cool new project. The Myth Who Never Quit. The God Fahim and Nicholas Craven. I was like, wow, that's a pretty cool project. A couple of days later, we had The Myth Who Never Quit 3, the follow-up installment. That dropped a few days after that. And then, once again, this is the God Fahim and Nicholas Craven. All 3 projects are them collaborating together. A couple of days ago, we had Dump God, Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap. And it is it's like one of my favorite musical projects of the year. And it's to be honest, all 3 just go super duper hard from the Dump God, the God Fahim, and Nicholas Craven. But this Dump God Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap has a couple of jams which I've just been like floating on. I think we got the Dump Dynasty and 10x Gravity. They are some of the best bangers of the year. And go have a little jam of it wherever you listen to your music. Just search the God Fahim Dump Dynasty, the God Fahim 10x Gravity, and you'll be surfing the wave. You'll be floating on the cloud, because very sample heavy, nifty, funky production. But the thing about the God Fahim and all three of these projects, and to be honest, a lot of his projects, is just the wisdom. I don't really like recommending hip hop, because like I'm going to recommend someone some hip hop and they're going to be talking about vulgar stuff. Like, I don't want to recommend something that's just like the opening line is the most vulgar stuff you've ever heard. That's not what I'm about, because it's not very imaginative. It's not very creative to just dish up some vulgarities as a 40-year-old rapper. Like, who wants to listen to that? Apparently a lot of people do, but not me. And I'm certainly not going to recommend it to you while you're listening to it in your car with your kids, while you're out on a walk with your little kiddos, or you're with your mate, you're with your missus, you're with your boyfriend, and you don't want them to hear some 40-year-old man rapping vulgarities. Like, who wants to listen to that? No, listen to the God Fahim, because he's dropping mindful gems. It's pure mindful gems with classic hip-hoppy, sample-heavy production from Nicholas Craven. I can't recommend the 2 songs from Dump God, Hyperbolic Time Chamber Rap. I like saying that. Dump Dynasty and 10x Gravity. I can't recommend those songs enough. But you got 3 projects over the last 2 weeks that all go hard, and that will serve as an entry into the God Fahim and his back catalogue, and you can also take another route into Nicholas Craven and his back catalogue, because he's got a bunch of projects, Boldy James, and all sorts of underground hip hoppers as well. So I could have been more prepared and like offered some mindfulness from the God Fahim, the Dump God himself, because his raps are full of it. Like, there's one where he's like, eat well, sleep plenty. And it's just like, well, that's just great. But I kind of butchered the quotable there. So, your musical jam, and then we'll get into the mindfulness. I'm not sure if you can weave in some mindfulness into your musical jam, but it's all good. Just hit me with some bangers.
I think eat well and sleep plenty might also need, like, don't forget to go for a walk every now and then and do some exercise on top of it. It's just to keep the balance going there. But I do like that. Those are two important priorities, I think, for myself and most people. What have I got here for some albums? Well, Nilafayanya, got an album called My Method Actor, which is some sort of I don't know, like sparkly British indie there, which is, I don't know, she has a completely unique sound. She doesn't really sound like anyone else. I very much enjoyed that album. Bit of Billy Strings recently for the guitar twangers. Name a Block Below a Massive Dark Land is a very good album. Again, someone who sort of has a sound quite unique to themselves. In Name a Box case, it's the sort of very gentle, kind of folksy kind of thing, but with some, I don't know, a few sneaky little influences that you might pick up listening to that stuff. What else? Kate Bollinger's album's real good. The Goat album was real good. Better throw in something local in here. There is an album from Jim Nothing. Great name. I'm not sure if it's the artist name or if it's a band name. I think it might just be the bloke and he has a band, but Jim Nothing has an album called Grey Eyes, Grey Lynn, which also is a great name for an album. Like, great artist name, great album name, and full of great songs. Like, there's I would say it, I don't know, just carrying on a very much a Kiwi tradition. There's a certain lineage there with indie rockers from this country, and this is like, fits nicely into that sort of perceptive little observations of Kiwi life alongside uh, catchy hooks, searing guitars every now and then, that kind of stuff, upbeat tunes. Keeps it funky with a couple of tempo shifts. I got some Paul Westerberg vibes from it, so that's always a very, very, very good sign in my eyes. So I'll chuck that one up there as well. Jim Nothing's Grey Eyes, Grey Lynn, and yeah, yeah, sounds good. There's some plenty of good albums there. I went to the Pearl Jam concert on Sunday as well, which is why I chucked Pearl Jam, and the normally try to keep the contemporary tune recommendations and the musical jams for the thing, but I was feeling it because I'd been to the show. Ran into some mutual acquaintances of ours as well. And I'll tell you about that later, but that's not a podcast chat. It was, yeah, good show. Yeah, lads were on good form. Well, Mike McCready at one point plays a guitar solo behind his back for like 3 full minutes, something like that, like behind his neck kind of thing as well. For like 3 full minutes. It went on for ages, to the point where I'm like, this is like a 60-year-old man. That guitar looks pretty heavy. Like, we get the point, bro. Like, don't hurt yourself here. But yeah, showmanship, lovely. And yeah, good show at old at Mount Smart as well, which just seems to be the scene of many great moments lately, and a few more coming up down the line as well. With the looking at the old schedule, there is a second Kiwi derby of Auckland FC versus Wellington Phoenix coming up in about a month's time.
I've got the song in the background here, so I'm just gonna make sure I quote the God Fahim, the dump god himself, correctly. Because here we go. So he says, work hard, study well, sleep, eat plenty. So there is some positive action. You're not just sleeping and eating plenty.
Covering all the bases there. He's got it sorted.
Then he goes, staying humble as I count my winnings. And there's something about thinking long term but living in the moment. So there we go. And with that, we need some mindfulness.
Well, there's a little bit of crossover between that and the quote I got lined up here from Soren Kierkegaard, who said, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards.
Makes a lot of sense. Because you live forward, you're staying in the moment, but you can only really make sense of things. You can only really comprehend things looking backwards. Because we can't predict the future, obviously, no matter how hard we try to manifest the abundance. You can't predict the future, but you can make sense of the past. But even then, making sense of the past, that's just the story you tell yourself. And every person...
Depends what kind of sense you're making, but yeah, generally.
Every person just makes up their own story about events that happened. So it's like, at some point, we're all just creating our own story of the past. And we've all got different ideas. Everyone can have a different idea about something that happened in the past. So we're all just kind of creating our own history, which is a far deeper type of pondering that we don't need to get into, because we are here to chat about Aotearoa sport. And leading us off today, well, no, let's start with, let's just quickly touch on the Breakers and Tauihi basketball, because we haven't quite hit the mark there in recent weeks. The Breakers had a loss last weekend. They lost to the Tasmania Jack Jumpers. Without getting into like nitty gritty, which I know is quite hard for you to do, what is this like a case of the Breakers are a good team who are going to lose a few games? Or are the Breakers a highly volatile, inconsistent team?
That is difficult to answer because I'm trying to figure it out. You know, I don't have an answer because I'm asking the same question. I watched them absolutely torch Melbourne in Melbourne on the back of a win away to Sydney, and then a really good win in between those against who was it, Adelaide or someone like that. just had a couple games in a row where they'd scored over 100 points, and those 3 games, those 3 wins in a row were their 3 highest scoring games of the season. I'm thinking, well, they've figured something out here. Like there's a formula, there's some patterns here, and I wrote a little bit about it in the newsletter on Friday, just like running through a few of the ideas. I think we talked about it a bit in one of the podcasts as well, like some of the ideas about what might have changed, what might have settled, how they're going. And then they go and have this game against Tasmania where they scored 3 points in the third quarter. Like it's not 3 buckets, it's 3 points. They scored 3 points in a 10-minute span throughout an entire quarter of basketball. It's like, you almost can't do that accidentally. Like I don't know how you go from shooting over 60, I think 66% from the field against Melbourne, who are sort of renowned as maybe the best defensive team in the competition. And they have the best defender in the competition in the form of Shea Ellis. So how you can go from that extreme to having a game where you lose by 19 points. Okay, they got blown out. That happens, but they scored 64 points overall. They scored 3 points in the third quarter. Later on in the same night, the second game of that evening, Melbourne United had a win where Chris Goulding scored like 40 something points. He scored 25 points in the third quarter. I think it was the third quarter as well. But he definitely scored 25 points in a quarter of that game. One player scored 25 points in a quarter on the same night that an entire team in the other game only scored 3 points in a quarter. These things are baffling. And yeah, how the it's the most Breakers thing to do, man. I've like keeping a steady head on the thing, and then they suddenly have this little span of games where they start to convince me, and then as soon as I start to be convinced, they do something, pull out the rug from underneath by having just a shocking performance. And I don't know how to explain those things other than maybe that point about the volatility is the real thing. Maybe they just are a volatile team where some days it's going to click, some days it's not going to click. It's not like Parker Jackson Cartwright had a bad game here, though. I think maybe the point might be a little more that Matt Mooney had a bad game. And guys like Sam Meninga, Kareem Lopez were solid, but it's not like they were solid with 20 points and 10 rebounds. They're sort of solid with 8.7 rebounds kind of range. And that might not be enough for a team that doesn't have a huge amount of depth. They didn't get anyone stepping up to fill in the gaps there. And yeah, it fell to pieces a little bit for them because defensively it was fine. They conceded 83 points. Well, recent games they've been winning comfortably, but by scoring well beyond that. It's very much the case of their offense abandoned them in this game, specifically in that one quarter. And yeah, I say we might need a few more weeks to get a gauge on the Breakers and whether this is just what they're going to be like, ups and downs, and on any given day they might turn it on or they might turn it off. But also I'm wary of the fact that we might well just get to the end of the season still asking these same questions and not understanding them. They seem like that. They might be that kind of team. I will just mention Mitch McCarron returned from injury for this game. He didn't play a lot. He played about 7 or 8 minutes, but I think he was like a -6 or something in the minutes that he played. And he had the worst offensive rating in the team beforehand. That was one of the things I'd noticed. I was looking at the players who, well, suddenly if they've shortened the rotation and are scoring a bunch of points, well, who are the guys who it's like addition by subtraction? Who hasn't been playing when the team has suddenly gotten good? Who was playing when the team wasn't playing so well or scoring so well? Mitch McCarron seems to be one of those guys. I looked it up. He had the lowest offensive rating in the team of about 80. He hadn't played a lot, but there was that. His offensive rating, adding another 8 minutes, has gone down. So this is not a personal stat. This is like while that player is on the court, how many points per 100 possessions does his team score? So that's 80 points per 100 possessions. It's now down to like 76. So he came in having been part of a couple of the Breakers' worst performances early on, when they did still win a couple of those games, to be fair. Those lower scoring games, but they were winning a few. He comes back and suddenly they have their worst game for a few weeks. I'm not blaming Mitch McCarron, who only played about 8 minutes in the game, but I am saying there's a little bit of a trend of like he was someone who I think they talked about as him and Mojave King seem to be guys I was hearing a lot about. These guys are going to come in and be quite, really influential players behind Parker Jackson Cartwright. Like Mojave King as a scorer, Mitch McCarron as a facilitator. I'm thinking, well, I watched Mitch McCarron play in the New Zealand NBL during the off season. He's a nice player. He's like a tidy, clever veteran, good passer, can't really shoot. I'm wondering how exactly he's going to be like a facilitator around a short point guard like Parker Jackson Cartwright if he's not a shooter, and maybe he's not. But then if McCarron's not going to play a big role, then Matt Mooney needs to play a bigger role, and he can't be having 5-point games if the Breakers are going to be winning. So I think there is a little bit of a tightrope act with them in terms of a few things need to align for them to do well, and we will see a lot more probably targeting of Parker Jackson Cartwright because he is such an influential player. Teams start double teaming him and not letting him get to the bucket, then because he's not an amazing 3-point shooter. He'll hit a few, but that's not the bulk of his game. He needs to be getting around screens and stuff like that. So there's a few of these things where it's like if teams start adjusting and taking the Breakers more seriously, they might just end up not being a volatile team, but just being a bad team. It's like losing a lot more games than they win. But they have room to make a few adjustments in there. So we will have to see how they react, which might be the case that after every time we talk about the Breakers, it might be that. So, well, let's see how they react to this game. Let's see how they react to the peak. Let's see how they react to the valley. But yeah, that last game was a valley coming after 3 peaks. So we'll see how they react.
The Tauihi basketball, we've got the Northern Kahu top of the table. They're 5-2. Tokomanawa and Mainland both have 4 wins each. The Northern Kahu, they're top of the table, and we've got Talia Tupaia leading the Kiwis with points. We've got Penina Davidson leading the Kiwis for rebounds. We've got Crystal Ledger Walker leading Kiwis for assists. They all play for the Kahu. We've got Penina Davison and Tupaia they are 3rd and 4th for minutes of the Kiwi players. They play for the Kahu. So the best team has 3 of the best Kiwis. You also wrote that you don't really like the heavy weight of imports in the Tauihi competition. I see where you're coming from, but I also think like they're just trying to boost basketball in New Zealand. So they just want as many, they're just trying to bump up the league. So that's all right. I'm not too worried. But what can you tell us about the Kiwis in the Tauihi competition, and considering that some of them are, the Northern Kahu are first with the best Kiwis, maybe you want to put the spotlight on those 3 Kiwis playing for the Northern Kahu.
Yeah, they got a few good youngsters as well at the Kahu too. So they're definitely the team that has the most Kiwi presence. So from that light, I really hope they go on and win the championship. They've been close the last couple of years. They might have won one of them. Can't remember now. I know Tokomanawa won one of the championships. They won the first one. I can't remember who won last year. It's all blending together in my head.
Who cares? Keep moving.
Well, it's relevant if they're a team that has been knocking on the door, needs to go that step further, and maybe this will be that season where they do that. It is tricky to put a spotlight on the Kiwi players though because of the import stuff. Where you've got, I think every team has to, and you have to fill your import quota as well as part of it. It's like 3 general imports plus 2 more imports who have to be from the Asia/Australia region. So a few of the teams have signed like young Australians there who weren't getting into the Aussie League, and those ones are a little bit more developmental, so there's room for some of the better Kiwi players to be starting ahead of them. And there is a rule that you have to have a New Zealander on the court at all times as well, so everyone has to have one in their starting lineup kind of thing. So there is limitations to ensure that the locals aren't getting overrun by anything, but at the same time, like what that leads to is just the best Kiwi player from each team seems to be doing really well. Like Ezra McGoldrick for Mainland and Stella Beck for Tokomanawa, McKenna Dale's in a lot of the stat categories for the Tauranga Whai. Where the one exception is that Northern Kahu team, because they did go out and sign like 3 or 4 really established Tall Ferns players. They actually have a few more that are actually like challenging to be playing ahead of and starting ahead of some of the imports there. But yeah, it's very much the usual suspects. Sean Rabati's up there on a couple of these stat lists as well. I did notice Payless Hokianga for the Whai sitting there at the fourth most assists for a Kiwi player. That's pretty awesome because she's like 16 or 17 or something like that. Been an absolute bolter in the Tall Ferns recently, but actually the last Tall Ferns tour, she was showing some pretty handy potential there. Where like obviously she has the potential to have been picked in this in the first place, but when you start bringing through a little bit of production, like you're not just out there to get some minutes and learn off the court and whatever. When you actually producing stuff in games, then you at that age, then you start to take a fair bit of notice. But it is the frustrating thing about it is I think I get both sides of the argument. You want to bring in a bunch of imports, raise the level and whatnot, but also you need to see the locals playing because the average fan is more likely to turn up to see Penina Davidson than they are to see someone who played 10 games in the WNBA, because that player doesn't have the name recognition to a Kiwi punter in the same way. So I would like to see that cut down next year, like a little bit more room with, so I think the men's NBL seems to have a nice balance, like 3 imports, or just don't make the teams fulfill them, like give them the space, but don't have to be a necessity. So, but this is also a league that's very much trying to find its place, and so there's a lot of experimentation from year to year. So I don't mind them trying something, and if it's deemed that maybe it's better, maybe this went a little bit too far, there's a type of league that will adjust to that as they should the following season. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's very much a Northern Kahu thing at the moment. And Talia Tupaia is probably the player to highlight because I think we know Crystal Ledger-Walker, incredible passer. Penina Davidson, great rebounder, scores inside. Maybe the Tall Ferns' best player over the last 5 years as well, just counting consistency and everything. Obviously, there's a certain Charlie Slater-Walker that's high on that list as well. But Talia Tupaia has just had so many injuries. And every couple of years, she seems to be out for like months on end with a fresh injury. And to see her playing big minutes in the Tauihi, to see her scoring big points, I mean that she's where I got here fourth overall for scoring. She's the only Kiwis in the top 13 for scoring in terms of points per game. She's averaging 19.1 points per game. Next best Kiwi for points is McKenna Dale with 12.5. So Tupaia is way up there. She's competing with the imports. She's getting stats in line with what the imports are doing. Pretty sure, I haven't got it written down in front of me, but I'm pretty sure her 3-point percentage is over 50% or something just absolutely insane. And she is a shooter too. Like that's not just someone who's shot 3 of 6 across the season. Like she is someone who lets it rip and is hitting shot after shot. So, yeah, a special focus there on Talia Tupaia to lead the Tauihi focus here because she has she's overcome a little bit more than most to get to where she is. So it's a beautiful thing to see her being as good as she has been so far. With about I think it's 3 rounds left to go, and then we got the semis in the final.
The Wellington Phoenix had a good win on the central coast of Australia up against the Mariners. We had there seems to be just a lot of crazy sporting stuff happening because Older Shige scored a banger. There was a bicycle kick banger in another A-League game. We've just got amazing Kiwi sporting moments just happening everywhere. Who else scored goals? We had Costa Barbarouses scoring a goal, and we had Sam Sutton scoring a goal. So the Wellington Phoenix won that game 3-0. Wellington Phoenix are now 4th in the A-League. They are 1 spot behind Auckland FC, who had a bye. And do you get points for a bye in the A-League or no points for a bye? Righto. So it's good to bit of bye variety because in the NRL you get points in the bag and it kind of messes up the whole ladder. A-League no points, so we just got to adjust the mind frame to how the A-League operates. That's why Auckland FC have dropped to third, because they had a bye, didn't get any points. What I do like is we talked about this last week, Auckland FC, best defence in the A-League, which I reckon is all Alex Paulson, and then you build a good defence from there. Wellington Phoenix, though, they've only conceded 3 goals, 2 of which were against Auckland FC, and Wellington Phoenix are 4th. The 3 teams ahead of them are the only teams who have conceded 3 or less goals. Every other A-League team has conceded 4 or more goals. So the Wellington Phoenix defense, like, that's pretty good as well. So shout out to the Wellington Phoenix. Was this... It seemed like this was just a more free performance from the Wellington Phoenix. They weren't restricted by the Cake Tin Derby atmosphere and the buzz and the hype and the pressure of doing that at home against Auckland FC in the first derby. I did draw the comparison to the Kiwis, the young Kiwis playing at Mount Smart against Tonga, young Wellington Phoenix team playing in their first derby. Like, Auckland FC were better equipped for that environment, for that atmosphere. Then the Wellington Phoenix, they just go to Central Coast, they just go to Australia. The Mariners don't seem to be too good this year because they're down in 10th and they haven't won a game. But it seems like, okay, the shackles are off for the Wellington Phoenix. They can just go out there and have fun. It seemed like a bit of a different vibe, but did you notice any kind of shift in how the Wellington Phoenix played that game against the Mariners?
Well, speaking of teams conceding 4 or more goals, Ollie Sale's Perth Glory have conceded 4 or more goals in 2 different games this season, let alone across the whole season. So
I am the goalkeeper whisperer. I am the goalkeeper whisperer. I predict these teams, you know.
That one's coming fairly true there. I pondered quite a bit in the All Whites in my All White squad breakdown about, like, at what point does Ollie Sale lose his 3rd choice goalkeeper spot in the All Whites, and Case/Keen Sims, one of the 2 of them, swoops in. When you think about him having played now, because he played the last 2 games of the season because their normal keeper got sent off at Gaius, so he had a nice little mini run there. 8 games in the top division of Sweden for a team that finished 6th is far and away a higher level than the A-League or Max Crocombe in England League One. Like, you know, I know he's not playing a whole lot, but he is kind of the keeper at the best level. And Ollie Sale doesn't look like a happy chappy these days. He is screaming at those defenders multiple times per game, although one of those goals in that game was directly his fault because he came out of his box, had a bad clearance straight to a striker who'd slapped it past him. So, you know.
Shout out Ollie Sale. I don't want to be too down on him. He's trucking along, and to be honest, by the sounds of it, it sounds like his team just sucks. It doesn't necessarily sound like Ollie Sale sucks. But I think that you do raise an interesting point. Goalkeeper is probably the deepest position for the All Whites. And if you're not playing at a high level, in Aotearoa football, men and women, to be honest, there's another goalie who is keen to take your spot. And that is what I like about Aotearoa football, is that depth. And like, if you're in a struggling A-League team, I don't know if you're going to crack the top squads anymore. And that's the baseline. That's the benchmark that has been set. However, I did ask you about the Wellington Phoenix. So I'm not sure how we got to Ollie Sale. He did play for the Phoenix, so shout out to them and that connection. For the Wellington Phoenix, what was the most notable change you saw from the Derby game against Auckland FC, then going away to the Mariners, aside from my quirky observation about maybe the shackles are off and they didn't feel the pressure as much?
Well, I think it's more than a quirky observation, because if you look at their record so far, they've played a home game against Western United, which they drew 1-1. They went away to Perth and won 2-0 against Ollie Sale. They were home against Auckland FC and lost 2-0. They went away to Central Coast Mariners, defending champions, beaten 3-0 on their own pitch. So in their home games, they've had a draw and a loss. In their away games, they've had 2 clean sheet victories, scoring 5 goals. scoring 1 goal in 2 games at home. So there might be something in that developing where when they've been away and sort of expected to be a little bit more in the underdog mold, conditions against them maybe more so, they've actually produced comfortably their 2 best performances. But also it's early days, so it's a little bit hard to compare that because I think there's something about the Central Coast Mariners game that is different to all the other 3. And the other previous away win was against Perth, and we've established they kind of suck right now. And like 2-0 away to Perth, not even Perth's second worst loss of the season, and they've only played 4 games. So, that's actually one of Perth's better performances. So I don't know if the Phoenix even come away with that much, reflected glory or anything. It was just a solid win on the road is all that was. Beating Central Coast 3-0 away is different, though. That goes beyond a solid win on the road. That is one of their better results for a couple of years during regular season game. Well, during regular seasons and playoffs, because they haven't actually really won a playoff game for quite a while. So, and like the caveat is that Central Coast Mariners have not had a good start to the season. They didn't have a good start to the season last year either, though, where I think they lost their first 4 games in a row. So they've actually been better this time than last time. Central Coast Mariners' previous result was a 0-0 draw against Perth Glory. So Ollie Sale did keep a clean sheet on that occasion. But if they didn't score past Perth, they didn't score past the Phoenix. So Central Coast is similar to the Phoenix in that, in fact, they're an example that mentioned a few times as being sort of like, well, we can do this because Central Coast do that. That being the focus on really boosting their own academy and developing players internally. And Central Coast have that same model where they bring through a bunch of players each season. They sell the best couple of them. One of them, from one of the key players from the last couple of championships, has been Max Ballard, who's now starting central defensive midfielder in the Eredivisie in Netherlands, where he's a teammate of Matthew Garbett, which is an interesting little wrinkle to this conversation. But yeah, suffice to say that Central Coast Mariners did this last year as well, where it was a slow start, where they'd lost a few players, they had to reconfigure a few things, and this is not a bad time to play them. Wellington Phoenix have done the same, though. Like, I don't think you can hold that against the Mariners in terms of this particular matchup, because the Phoenix don't have Alex Paulson, don't have Ben Holt, don't have Finn Sermon, don't have half of their imports from last season. They've recalibrated a whole lot as well. And this game, for the first time, I think we saw the vision. I think the first 3 games, it was a bit more. There's a couple of players injured. It's not quite the stuff that Italiano had been teasing throughout preseason about. We've been working on these things. We've got a new style of play. Like, I spent the first 3 weeks wondering, okay, but you said you want to build around Marco Rojas, and I don't really see where Marco Rojas fits into this back in the way they were playing. I think the fact that Rojas wasn't playing was part of why they were playing that back 3, though I think now we can probably say that a bit more clearly, is that they adjusted because they had some guys out injured, so they played in a different way. And now here you saw them go to a back 4. You saw them playing in more of a sort of 4-3-3, defending 4-5-1 kind of setup, where it's a little bit curious because you had Matt Sheridan playing as a right winger, but also expected to get back and double up with Tim Payne. Is almost like having 2 right fullbacks. I think they really wanted to ensure that Central Coast weren't able to get anything going down that wing, and so it was a bit imbalanced. I think that part of it is more so just adapting to the opponent, but you can also see how this style of play just immediately made them look more fluid, and the fluidity was the major theme of preseason. All these players that they're signing who can play in multiple positions. Italiano's been telling this, like, guys are expected to play multiple positions during the game. Different situations, a midfielder might have to act like a right back, might have to act like a left winger, might have to act like a striker, whatever. Like, these guys are expected to have to be adaptable like that. And for the first time in these 4 games against Central Coast Mariners, I think we really, like I say, we saw the vision. We started to see the ways in which that might manifest on a footy pitch, where I think a major factor was Paulo Retre being available. He goes straight into the starting lineup and had a pretty big presence out there. Hideki Ashige was unreal. He scored that superb free kick. He also set up the other two goals. Like he got the assist for Barbarossa's goal. He got the assist for Sam Sutton's goal. So a pretty spectacular day of production from that fellow. And you can see how he was roaming around and really linking things up. And Nagasawa, I think, had a strong game. And you got Alex Rufer kind of base of the midfield locking things up. I think an undercover hero of the, I should mention as well, Josh Oluwayemi, much better game from after, bouncing back after the shocker mistake. It was really just that one mistake, but it's still, that's the kind of thing late in a derby game where you cost your team a point, send them on to defeat. That's a dangerous one for the old mentality, and he showed plenty of character to produce a clean sheet performance. I think he made 11 saves in this game. Didn't really feel like there were any amazing, crazy ones that they had to make. I think Central Coast unleashed a few long shots that he dealt with comfortably. But what were you going to say something?
So I think it might have been Sunday. So it was a busy Sunday, lots of rugby league.
Yeah, extremely busy Sunday.
But I tuned in after, so I kind of set you up with the change of the Wellington Phoenix because I watched Chiefy's interview after the game and he referenced the change in formation. But then also they were going through like their, how you get like your Dream 11 top performers or whatever the crack. And it's like, well, who cares? I can see who the best player was. I don't need you to like tell me your point scoring measurement for the best player. Same thing for this game, and Oluwayemi was the best player on the field, and like the commentator straight away said like, well, he had a lot of saves, but the shots were pretty much straight at him. So but as you alluded to, it is a good bounce back performance from Oluwayemi, and like that's all you need him to do. Just make the saves, make the passes that need to be made. Do you think it's easier for him to play out from the back with a back four? Like if they have like a if they have like a designated game where they're like, okay, we're going to play with the back four this time, is it easier for a goalie to play out from the back with that formation as opposed to the back three?
It is a good question, and I think it probably depends on your midfield and how deep you want those guys to play. Because if you're trying to just get the ball forward, you kind of want the two other midfielders, not Rufer, but the two more advanced ones. You kind of want them up there in support of your wingers and your strikers. So, but if you're trying to build up from the back, you expect things to happen a little bit more slowly but deliberately, and therefore those guys can drop in and be options, because you'd normally see like the centre backs will peel either side of the goalkeeper, so you're almost like in a three with the goalkeeper being the middle third, and maybe a midfielder drops in to collect through the centre, and then that guy's, there's a bit of pressure on that pass. That guy has to be very strong on the ball, has to be able to take it on the half turn, or know where the pressure's coming from. Alex Roof is really good at that though, so that's not really a problem. And then you start to get your fullbacks involved. He does like his fullbacks to get a little bit inverted in certain situations, so that's also part of it. We'll see. It was a weird one there because I looked at the SofaScore stats, and because SofaScore does that same thing as one of the many apps that do the let's come up with a way of ranking these guys out of 10, and they gave him a 9.4 best player on the park, despite 10 saves. It was 5 from inside the box, couple high claims. There's nothing else in any of these stats. So I think they've only looked at, he made a lot of saves, therefore he played fantastically. But his passing stats are really funny because you've got 12 out of 12 short passes. So I think short passes or medium passes, counting both in the same category, I think that's anything under less than 20 meters. So long pass doesn't necessarily mean kicking forward, could mean a switch of play. Sometimes it's even centre back to centre back if they're spread out enough. But 12 out of 12 for the short and medium passes, and 0 out of 13 for long passes.
Yeah, good stuff.
So none of the long ones actually found their target. Or maybe, to be fair, Hideki Ashige, Costa Barbarossas at front, Matt Sheridan as well. These aren't big dudes. So if you're going long and expecting them to win headers, it might not be. It might just be long passes along the ground. I don't know. But if that's the case, they're probably not going to win many of those headers. That's not really how they play. But yeah, there's a little bit of contrast there between how he But well, just between the two different varieties of Oloiemi passes there.
Barbarouses and Ishige might not be the biggest dudes, but the thing about football, the long ball is as good as the rebound, right? Like the long ball is as good as the
first phase, second phase,
And it's like, yeah, sure, some dude can win a header, but I don't like footballers aren't putting a header to one of their teammates 100% of the time. It feels more like when I watch football, feels more like 50-50. And if that's the situation, like you're just putting it up in the mixer, sure, they win the header. Sure, it's Oloiemi's not getting credited for an accurate pass, but you can always win the next phase. And if you're doing that up the field, pass, now you're in behind and you can create a chance. What you're saying about the inverted kind of wing back. So we've got Sam Sutton on the left and we got T-Pain on the right. Sam Sutton is awesome. I don't really have any negative anything negative to say about Sam Sutton. The cool thing about what those players do, yeah, there is that inversion. So they do get infield, they do join the midfield. However, they just love to boost it up the sideline. And they both do it. So there is, not only do you have variety in how they progress up the field, whether it's staying wide or coming infield, but they both love to get up the field. So you might have Sam Sutton boosting it up the left flank on one play. Next play, you got T-Pain boosting it up on the right flank. And I think that is a very useful skill set to have. Who's the left back for Auckland FC? That's Franny de Vries.
That's I love
the who's the right back? Who's the captain for Auckland FC?
Hiroki
Sakai. It feels like Auckland FC. It feels more like Franny de Vries just chills out a bit more at left back, and then Sakai bursts forward. Sam Sutton's faster than de Vries. He's more agile. He's more nimble. And he's got a greater attacking skill set, I believe, than de Vries. So just comparing them, not saying one's better than the other, but the Wellington Phoenix, they've got two dudes on either flank who are going to get right upfield. And they can get infield because Sam Sutton's goal came with him dribbling infield from his left wing. So I think it's something to watch out for.
You had I think Costa Barbarouses sort of drops in and does like a little 1-2 thing with Ishige, both of them drifting out to the left. And because they drift out to the left, Barbarouses actually does like a wraparound run. It's almost, he's like
second man play.
Yes, they second man play stuff. Yeah, and because they both peel left, Sutton cuts inside. So it's really nice. It's a beautiful goal, and Sutton takes it really nicely with a little dink over the keeper. But the way they created that chance from having their two furthest forward players and their left back, just the movement and the sort of interaction between them was really awesome. Like, it was a fantastic goal.
Yeah, I'd say that's something to watch out for with the Phoenix, because it's like, yeah, sure, okay, you got to watch out for Tim Payne on the right. Okay, you're watching out for Tim Payne on the right, and then suddenly Sam Sutton's bursting forward on the left, and that kind of, and you've got Alex Rufer, who I think's the best player in the A-League. You've got him, and my favorite thing about Alex Rufer, aside from really rugged midfield mahi with a splash of razzle dazzle, my favorite thing about Alex Rufer is he gets the ball from the middle out wide. So whether the ball comes to him from the right and then he passes out to the left, or if the ball comes to him from the left and he's passing out right, maybe the ball comes to him from a central position, then he just distributes it wide. He is really good at passing into the wide channels, which, as I'm talking through this, is a complementary skill set for Sam Sutton on the left, T-Pain on the right. So there's a couple of things I like there with the Wellington Phoenix. I also had a chuckle about Annalie Longo's dog on the field at the great Porirua Park. Easily the best football stadium. Yeah, I'll say best football stadium in Aotearoa, because you get a bit more quirky antics compared to Mount Smart. Like Mount Smart is a full-on stadium, but Porirua Park, whenever I watch a game at Porirua Park, whether it was the motorcycles doing burnouts last year, dog on the field this year, like I just love Porirua Park. I reckon the Phoenix should play a lot more games at Porirua Park. Aside from your expertise with dogs on the field from your National League coverage, yes, it's funny. Yes, it's like cute and cool and all that stuff. But for our discussion, the Wellington Phoenix lost that game. They lost that game 1-0. And they are now 0-2 to start the season. They have conceded 5 goals. They have scored 2 goals. And they are one of... Sydney FC is the only other team with an 0-2 record so far. I like what the Phoenix do. Like it's still, to me, it's still a bit helter-skelter watching them play football, because it's like their intention is to make the most difficult pass possible. So like in theory, it looks like they're trying to make the easiest pass possible, because it's like they're trying to make a small pass into space, but the way they do it makes it a really difficult pass. Like they're trying to do like one-timers into space. They're trying to back heel to an overlapping runner. And it's like, I understand the game plan of Paul Temple. We got this small ball idea, whatever. I think if they just took like a fraction more care on the ball, they would be dominating teams. Because their concepts of getting into space and passing into space and like attacking movements are so defined and well coached that their lack of care passing the ball does them a disservice. It's literally just like take a moment and make sure your pass is going to your teammate. Take a moment to get your head up and actually look to the other side of the field when one of your teammates is in acres of space, and give them the ball instead of going back to your centre back or making a really difficult pass into the midfield. I think it's just a little bit more care, and they would be a very good A-League team. But we've now had a season and a bit of this kind of football where every motion just becomes a turnover, and then you're playing tennis. You're just going back and forward, and it's a bit helter-skelter, a bit frantic. And the reason I'm like, they're doing themselves a disservice is because they create really good chances when they do connect with their passes. Emma Main had a few good shots. Zoe McMeekin's, to me, she's the epitome of Wellington Phoenix women's football, because she's everywhere on the field. She's so skillful. To be honest, she's audacious with the football. Like she has no issues doing any razzle dazzle. Like she's going to do razzle dazzle whether you like it or not, and it's really fun to watch. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes she ends up out of position. Sometimes there's a hole at right back, and it's like it kind of breaks down. But I do like what she's doing, like what Emma Main's doing, and then we got the centre backs, Mackenzie Barry and Rebecca Lake, who are just like 2 gritty Kiwi centre backs that set the tone. Like this is, the results aren't there, and I can see like you were saying about Chiefy, I can see the vision, I can see what they're working towards. I'm going to be curious if they can kind of click into a more ruthless type of attacking movement. Because it's, okay, here's a way to frame it. You got Annalie Longo, she's like what I want the team to be. She's got control on the ball. Every pass is deliberate. It's accurate. It's on time. It sets up the next play. Then you get into like a McMeekin, Alyssa Wynnum territory, where it's like if the passes get a bit more 50-50. And I don't think they've got like the clinical strikers as Canberra did. They had the veteran, I'm not sure of her name,
Yeah, Michelle
Birdman,
Heyman.
Heyman. Like the Phoenix don't have that type of striker to just make sure every chance is finished. So they do need to kind of set up better chances. But it's this. What am I trying to say? It's like a balance between. I can see the weakness, I can see the flaws in what they're doing, but I still think like the foundations are being established, and I'm optimistic that they can build on these foundations quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I tend to agree with that. Where it's, in fact, I would take it further and say I don't know that it's even a small ball thing necessarily. I think it's just in general they don't make enough good decisions on the ball. And whether you're trying to play small or whether you're trying to go against the grain, I think there's just a few too many times where it's like maybe it's a lack of awareness on the options around or whatever it is. I think maybe they just um yeah, a little more care on the ball, like you say, or a little bit more just slightly more deliberate with how things go. But I mean, frankly, as cool as the small ball idea is, and I think it really does suit them, and you can see how they're working towards it in terms of what we actually saw last season, not in terms of how much it was spoken about, but in terms of what we actually saw. I kind of think small ball only really existed when Macy Fraser had the ball and a bit of Annalie Longo, but she was injured for a lot of last season, so kind of only played about half the time. I don't really know that anyone else was doing a whole lot of small ball. I don't think you got small ball from Kate Taylor, or I don't think you got small ball from Hope Breslin or the imports or anything like that, you know?
Would you like how do we progress this style of football then? Is it just like they're playing helter skelter football? Or they're playing like that? This is the thing. Is it razzle dazzle? Is it helter skelter?
I think it's razzle dazzle when it works and it's helter skelter when it doesn't work, maybe. It's because I think it wasn't so bad against Canberra, but even then, like their goal was a little bit of this, and there were a couple of other chances, particularly in the first half. I think second half was quite a different performance, where they looked quite vulnerable at the back. And in the game against was Western United, wasn't it? In the first game, they were absolutely terrible at the back. And it was the same thing where it's like the vulnerabilities come from getting hit in transition because they're losing the ball in the midfield. Because you're not hitting those passes properly, you're getting caught out, and they're trying to do a few funky things with like their attacking setup is different to their defensive setup, which is fairly common these days. Chiefy's all over this kind of stuff. Like you defend in one formation, you attack in other formations, and transition, you're a different formation. You got to be fluid and flexible between all these kind of things. But they're yeah, they kicked off the first game of the season with a back three. And the back three had Mackenzie Barry on the left, Tiana Jaber on the right, and Rebecca Lake through the middle. So often when they had the ball, Lake is stepping up into midfield. And she's operating like as an extra midfielder, either alongside Maya McCutcheon or behind Maya McCutcheon, so McCutcheon can go a bit further forward. And they want their wing backs to get forward and be part of the attack. They have to because that's where their width is coming from in these formations. And what you saw in the first game was they picked Mibe Tanaka, one of their imports, as a wing back who's more of a winger. In this game, they started Zoe McMeekin as the right wing back, who's more of a fullback. So as one has an attacking sensibility, one has a defensive sensibility. Tanaka played really well in attack in that Western United game, but she got subbed off at halftime, probably because they were getting shredded behind her up the wing, like defensively. The way they were getting shredded was they were getting caught out, outnumbered. Either if not outnumbered, then it's 2-on-2. But just Lake and Barry and Jaber just Barry a little more so. I think Barry's long legs. She covers ground pretty well, and she's very good in the challenge, so she can make up for it. But Lake and Jaber in particular were getting caught out for pace as well. I don't think that's a very speedy back three. Zoe McMeekin helps that. If you've got her at wing back, she's an insane athlete. So she is going to get, speaking of long legs, she's going to get up and down. She can get back. She can track. That helps. But yeah, they were so ridiculously vulnerable in the first half. of that first game. And so they switched it up at halftime, went to a back four. Maya McCutcheon actually dropped back into centre back, which I thought was a bit of a shame because I thought she's a really good defensive midfielder. She wins the ball and she feeds it around. She does Alex Rufer type things for that team. I don't see her as a small ball type player, but I think you also don't want that in that part of you just want someone who can win the ball and get it to players like Longo, who then starts to link up, drifting around, finding little overloads, 1-2 passes. That's where the small ball stuff comes into effect. Short passes and movement off the ball, like pass and move, follow your pass, all this stuff. That led to so how are you going to adjust in the second game? Do you throw the whole plan that you've been working on all preseason out the window because it was terrible in the first half? Well, ideally not, but also if you're not confident it's going to be any better in the second game, then you kind of have to. So it was waiting to see the team list and what that might look like. But yeah, with the adjustments they made was they went back to they kept the back three. Well, they returned to it because they abandoned it in the second half of the first game. Went to the back three, but swapped Lake and Barry. So Barry was the central defender and Lake was sort of the left-sided centre back, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know the purpose on that. Like Lake is better on the ball as a passer, but Barry is probably the superior kind of tackler, defensive arts type thing. Maybe they just wanted Barry in the middle because she can cover side for those transition moments a bit better, where she'll be available on either side rather than if you're the left centre back and they're attacking down the right, you're kind of out, you're not really the one engaging there. Maybe that was the idea. I don't know, just trying to solidify the defense. And yeah, Zoe McMeekin comes in as a more defensive minded, but not entirely defensive minded, but just more so than having a winger playing as wing back. So yeah, that was the thing, but they still conceded a goal that felt very similar to the ones they conceded last time. However, they only conceded one goal. It was just the one, and then they should frankly have scored a bunch because I think they turned it on in the second half. There was some moments in the first half, but the second half, they were all over them. And there's a couple of interesting players in there that I'm quite curious about how this looks for them this season. One is Olivia Ferguson, who we saw for the first time coming off the bench, English striker, 29 years old. So unlike most of the other team, because I think another reason the small ball stuff and maybe not having enough awareness and, well, again, like I said, it's not really small ball, it's just why they're losing ball in a lot of these areas. Like Mania Elliott is 19, Zoe McMeekin is 20. Who else was there? Alyssa Wynnum is 21. I should have it. Yeah, she's 21. Annalie Longo, by far the standout in those areas, is like 32 or something like that. 33 actually. So, putting one and one together there, you see the veteran players seem to know how to handle those moments, and the emerging players a little bit less game awareness in those spots, but also moments of like flashy brilliance. And you want Alyssa Wynnum on the ball as much as you can, especially in those areas outside the penalty area where she can pick a pass or she can beat a defender, get a shot away. I think she had some really nice attacking moments, but they need someone to tie things together and someone to finish the goals. And they don't have Mariana Speckmeyer this season, who's already scoring goals for Melbourne City and looking fantastic for them. So Olivia Ferguson's coming in as someone who does have a bit of responsibility of maybe being the one to be that player who can score 10 plus goals this season. And she hasn't really been that player at other clubs she's played at. So I'm a little, there's a lot of don't know if you can hear the dog going nuts in this thing. Sounds like the postman's arrived, so we'll fight through. I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility on Ferguson to be someone who can score a bunch of goals, and I'm not sure if she's that type of player or not because we haven't seen enough of her. The other one is Grace Jale. And Grace Jale's, this is the fourth year in the A-League. She played for the Phoenix, then she went to Canberra, then she went to Perth. Now she's back at the Phoenix. So she plays for a different team every year, and I'm not sure she's really clicked at any of them. So first, yeah, Wellington Phoenix, Jale scores 6 goals in 12 games, 848 minutes. Solid start, beginning to a professional career. That was pretty cool. She was the top scorer for the Knicks, and then she left to Canberra United, where she stepped things up a little bit. 3 goals, 7 assists. Playing a little bit more as a out-and-out winger and less of a goal scorer, but having pretty good successful time of things there. Then she goes to Perth where she scores 3 goals real early on in the season. I think it might have even been 3 goals in the first 3 games. And then doesn't score again or get an assist for the entire rest of the season. So she really did hit a bit of a plateau there. And I'm just a little bit confused about who Grace Jolly is as a player, because for a long time there, I was really banging the drum on being like, I want to see her as a striker for the Football Ferns. I want to see her, she's playing a lot of right midfield stuff. I want to see her up front playing alongside Hannah Wilkinson, ideally, not instead of her, but like, let's have two big, tall, strong, aerial prowess kind of strikers, and then actually we could be a team that crosses the ball in the box. And then she started getting a few goes for the Phoenix playing as a striker. And I kind of changed my mind. Like, I kind of got around to thinking, I'm not sure that she has that, like, that striker's instinct. And even watching her in this game, because at the same time, I'm also not sure if she's necessarily a winger, or like, should she actually be playing maybe as an attacking midfielder, or with like, what is the best role here? Well, the Phoenix have signed her at a time when they need to pick up the slack from the goals they've lost from Speckmeyer. Ferguson will do some of that. I think she did score quite a few goals when she was playing for Wolverhampton most recently. And earlier on in her career, she had 1 or 2 spells. I think there was a time with Sheffield United, she scored like 7 goals at a goal every second game or something in a season. Since then, less so. There is a little bit of Hannah Wilkinson about her goal sort of ratios, where the lower levels she scored copiously and looked fantastic. Like, looked like someone who should be playing and being successful much higher up. But then she also played much higher up. She played for Celtic. She played earlier in her career. She played a bit in the WSL and didn't really score goals there at all. So I'm sure the A-League is, the A-League is not the WSL. She doesn't have to be at that level. I'm sure she'll contribute some decent stuff, but that's not enough. They're going to need some goals from Grace Jolly as well. And Jolly had some really nice moments in the second half against Canberra. I thought she had a couple of headers that were really good, especially because I remember her missing a sitter of a header at the Nations Cup, or Olympic qualifying it was, for the Football Ferns. The start of this year, must have been, or late last year. I can't really remember the timelines. And I'm thinking, like, for someone who's as tall and strong as she is, I don't actually think she's that good in the air. But then here she was that good in the air. So, so sometimes maybe you just have a bad day on those things. But yeah, there's an obvious, like, she's got athleticism and she's got ability with the ball. Like, often Kiwi footballers have come through with one of those things or the other. She's got both. There's a clear talent. There's a clear, like, someone's going to get the best out of this player, but I just, at this point, I'm not sure what the solution is. So but at the same time, I'm also confident Paul Temple doesn't sign someone unless he doesn't have like the an idea for how that's going to work. So this is all just a disjointed way of saying I'm interested in not just how Grace Jolly plays or how productive she is, but also the role she's asked to do and how she seemed to fit in. So far, it's been as a second striker. So you got 2 strikers up there. Emma Main's been a bit more of the sort of poacher, and Jolly's been a bit more of the dropping in a little bit more to midfield, try to link things up, flick things on, back post headers, this kind of stuff. And I tend to think, from the evidence of her career so far, that's probably about her best role. So I'm looking forward to how this is going to look. And I assume at some point Emma Main probably drops to the bench as an alternate, which is a shame. I like Emma Main a lot as a player, but she'll still get plenty of opportunities. And I suspect Ferguson comes in as the other striker. So you got an interesting dynamic there, because they will be relying on a lot of goals. I think you also saw times against Canberra where, like, chances fell to Wynnum and chances fell to Elliott, and can't remember McMeekin. She a little bit more setting things up. McMeekin, I can't remember if she had any notable shots in particular, but like, there's chances where it was like, if someone else was there, maybe this might have been a goal. It's falling a bit too often to the facilitators rather than the finishers. And then I'm thinking, well, who are the finishers? Because I'm thinking Charlie maybe is more of a facilitator than a finisher herself, and Ferguson hasn't necessarily been that player before. So there's some things to to figure out, and there will be players who need to show something that they haven't necessarily produced before in their career for the Wellington Phoenix women to get where they want to go. But those players have the ability to do that, and so it's annoying because they've lost 2 games in a row, and now they've dug themselves into a hole to begin the season. Like, they got to work their way out of this. But there was enough encouragement, particularly second half against Canberra, to think, well, they're still a pretty good team. Like, it's got to click at some point. They got to figure this out. Things will get in alignment, and they will hopefully be able to score some goals. But yeah, my main concern here is less about them being able to create chances and more about them being able to put those chances away. And that has been a pattern that has followed them in every season of the Wellington Phoenix and the A-League women so far.
Let's roll through some of the best Kiwi footballers around the world. Maybe not necessarily the best, just some who were in action front and centre, because we did have Liz Anton playing for Canberra United and someone else coming off the bench.
Yeah, Ruby Nathan played the second half as well.
Good stuff. Good to see them back in Aotearoa, playing at the glorious Porirua Park.
And Anton was fantastic as well for defensively for the for Canberra United, and them withstanding that second half barrage from the Phoenix and being able to keep that clean sheet and get the victory for a team, which is annoying for a Phoenix fan, but at least promising for a Kiwi football fan, because Anton is one of several players who I've sort of got in the back of my head at the moment. It'll be a little while before we see the football Ferns, because they're not playing in the last window, so they won't be able to play again for a couple more months. By which time, Anton is one of the few players that I think are gonna, they string together some good form there, pushing football Ferns squads from the outside sort of thing. Like, Anton hasn't been in there for a little while. She does have about 20 odd caps, but she hasn't been picked for a few squads. She's someone who's at least going to be threatening to play her way back in. I think Hannah Blake is on that list, absolutely. Devon Jackson's had a good start to her A-League career, A-League season with Newcastle Jets. Kelly Brown has scored 2 fantastic goals from outside the box for Perth Glory as well. I mentioned Hannah Blake playing in England now, Maggie Jenkins playing in Turkey. Like, there's a few of these players who, not to mention the Under-20 World Cup and some of those players who are starting to look towards senior football, a lot of them playing professionally at the moment. Had debuts for Chiara Briselli at Sampdoria and Millie Clegg for Racing Louisville. Millie Clegg already an established football fan, so that's no change. But there is a group of players who weren't part of the Olympic squad who have the opportunity to play their way into contention under the next coach and over the next few months with their club stuff. So that is something I'm tracking sort of low key on the football Ferns perspective. But so shout out to Liz Anton on a very good game, even though it would have been all right if she'd let the Phoenix score an equalizer, so it wasn't a 0-2 start. They would have got away with that, but whatever.
I did like Ruby Nathan coming off the bench. She's a more athletic footballer than I think a lot of the Kiwi footballers are on the women's side. Quite powerful, quite mobile, quite fast,
very
quite
tall
skillful
as well. Yeah.
Yep. And so I think that is a different body type and athletic profile to a lot of other women's footballers around Aotearoa, and I did like her impact. Like, I felt like Canberra were defending a lot in that second half, but whenever the ball got to Ruby Nathan, who was playing wide right, she had a few moments. She looked like a threatening wing player. Kelly Brown, as you said, she scored a nice goal for Perth Glory. And we've also got someone like Claudia Bunge. I did see a bit of her playing for Melbourne Victory, so that was cool. India Paige Riley scored her first goal in the WSL. So was this her first goal for Crystal Palace, or was it just her first goal in the WSL?
Yeah, first goal for Crystal Palace, full stop. And it came in the WSL. It was within 30 seconds of kickoff, just running forward from the right wing, and Crystal Palace just won. I think they were playing Everton. They ended up drawing 1-1, and Everton were just playing the ball out into their midfield, lost it. Player runs through. Riley spots an opportunity, gets into the box, taps it home. That's how you do it. She's had a couple of chances. Crystal Palace have been a team that, because they've just been promoted, they're one of those teams that spend a lot of time defending as well. So it was a bit like what you're saying with Ruby Nathan and Canberra. It's like, you're not really getting goal opportunities, but you are doing some nice stuff being an outlet on the counter attack and transitional moments. Like this goal was a transitional moment. So yeah, great from Indy Riley, who has started more games than she hasn't for Crystal Palace since joining them. So that's, she's really rocketing up into one of our most prominent Kiwi footballers now.
I don't think Katie Kitching is far from that status as well. She's scored again for Sunderland. Is that in WSL? Is that in the lower tier?
This is, yeah, one division below.
So Katie Kitching, is she an attacking midfielder? Looks like she's an attacking midfielder and she's scoring lots of goals. So that's another attacking threat that we need to watch out for with the football Ferns. And if you haven't, you can check those goals out on our social media platforms as well. Who is your National League Spotlight of the Week? Let's just create that little segment because there are a couple of youngsters on the women's side doing amazing stuff. You've got a clip here of Matthew Elliott. So who do you want to put the spotlight on from the weekend's National League football? Also got Brittany Cunningham-Lee in action with some goals. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I do like the way Matt Ellis has been playing. He is a winger for Western Springs. He's been just like real speedy, getting up and down and whipping the ball in the box, taking on defenders, scoring goals, setting goals up. He's been very good for them. Western Springs have been a fun team to watch because they also kind of run that span between Helter Skelter and Razzle Dazzle, where like they will build the ball up from the back. They'll pass the ball beautifully with 1-2 touch stuff through their midfield. One Gatkick picking passes, Jackson Manuel picking passes. Emiliano Tade up front. Ellis's goal that he scored on the weekend was from Emiliano Tade doing like, they're making like a crisscross run. Like Tade's going towards the sideline, Ellis cuts inside, overlapping him, and Tade backheels it past the defender as a through ball into space. It was beautifully done. But also Western Springs have had moments where they've been just pressed to smithereens. But Napier did them that way in the first round. Kashmir Tech did it a few times in the first half, and then Western Springs adjusted to get a nice victory in that game. So Matthew Ellis has been pretty cool. It's one or two games I haven't quite got around to watching yet, but I think the highlight. Well, no, I don't think it should be him though. I think he just had a nice highlight. He's been good over the course of the season, but this particular week, kind of want to throw the spotlight on the Wellington Phoenix, who had a spectacular win against Auckland City at Kiwatia Street, withstood the barrage at the end, but with 3-0 up at halftime, away to Auckland City, inflicting consecutive defeats on Auckland City. Gabriel Sloan Rodriguez and Luke Brooks-Smith both played this game, and they were pretty awesome. The I don't know, the double-barreled brothers, the hyphen twins, I don't know, Brooks-Smith and Sloan Rodriguez, where the Knicks were playing that lovely transitional stuff, passing through midfield. These guys were dropping in from the wings. They were swerving on the ball. They were holding off markers. And this is Auckland City, who are extremely good at counter pressing. When they lose the ball, they win it back very quickly. Like that's how they operate. And these young Knicks players are like teenagers are swiveling through this pressure and getting forward. And Sloan Rodriguez scored 2 brilliant goals. I thought also, though, their centre backs were outstanding throughout the whole game, with Dylan Gardner and Jaden Smith. Jaden Smith, who's on a full-term scholarship contract like those other two, like the 2 wingers I mentioned. Gardner isn't, but I'm sure he will get one at some point because those two, like a trend of the Phoenix Academy for the last few years has been that they do, well, not a trend, but a worry, like a sort of back of the head, is this maybe that kind of thing, is that maybe they do develop a lot of really good technical midfielders, a lot of passes, a lot of positional-based stuff. Maybe not enough focus on like the more rugged defensive dark arts. Like, are you just going to be a physical brute who can get up and win a lot of headers and like launch themselves in front of challengers? Finn Sermon came through at that time as a major exception to the rule. And now that they've had that example of Finn Sermon, Dylan Gardner, Jaden Smith feel like 2 guys who are very similar to Finn Sermon's kind of profile of tall centre backs, powerful in the air, also sneaky good with their feet. And Jaden Smith actually scored the first goal in that game as well, getting up with a header from a corner. So the yeah, the Phoenix youngsters doing pretty spectacular things. Let's not ignore that old mate Bones, Dublin Bones saved a penalty in this game as well off a Maya Bevon. So really outstanding stuff from them. From the women's perspective, I think I gotta go Brittany Cunningham-Lee, who was part of that under 17 World Cup bronze medal team once upon a time, but has really just stuck around the domestic scene. She had sort of in her late teen years, she was a pretty prominent player in the old version of the National League. You know, when you got the Auckland and Northern type federation teams still before it went club based, and so she was getting picked for those things. But more recently, I mean, I think she spent the season. She played National League last year with Ellerslie, but they were the bottom team in the National League, and it was probably quite frustrating to be a tall, physical, strong striker with pace who can turn defenders, who can run directly, who can play with back to goal or on the move, or like all these options she has as a forward. She's playing for a team that can't get her the ball often enough because they're losing 3-4-0 every week kind of thing. So she actually spent the season gone through the winter playing below the first division with, I think it was Franklin United, who did make a little bit of a run in the Cage Shepherd Cup. So there was some of that. But she's now a guest player with Eastern Suburbs who didn't score a goal in the first 3 weeks of the season. The next 4 weeks of the season, they've scored so many goals, they're now the highest scoring team in the league. So they went from 3 weeks not being able to score at all. Now they're the best attacking team. They've scored 21 goals in 4 games, I think it is. And Brittany Cunningham-Lee has scored or assisted 11 of those 21 goals and just generally looks unstoppable. Like there was a goal she scored where she just it was a tap in 6 yard box kind of thing where it gets to the line. It was Zoe Benson who gets so many assists for them as well. Squares the ball and Brittany Cunningham-Lee just steps in front of her marker, holds her off, and then does a little flick behind her standing foot with the heel to score it. It just felt like one of those basketball plays where it's just like, get the ball to the center down low, let them go to work, let them post up, they're going to score, you can't stop them. And then usually in the NBA, that player runs back to half court, like beating their chest, going, you can't guard me kind of thing. She felt like a you can't guard me kind of player in that moment. And frankly, for the last month, she's felt like that as well. So I have seen enough National League in my time to say that the players who dominate like that, they're good enough to play A-League. So Brittany Cunningham-Lee, who was part of a really prominent youth kind of wave from that under-17 squad, a lot of them are kicking on at this current moment at professional clubs around the world. She didn't really do that. She's kind of stuck around just domestically. But I'm seeing an A-League caliber player there, you know, and there is an A-League club emerging probably next season in Auckland, when Auckland FC start their women's team, as they are supposed to be doing. Haven't heard anything on that for quite a while, but I'm assuming the plan is to get going for the next season. I'd be chucking Brittany Cunningham-Lee on the list there in the same, maybe not quite the same breath as Chloe Knott and Saskia Vosper, but the next breath afterwards.
The Blackcaps, they are in Sri Lanka and they have drawn their T20 series 1-1. So they only played 2 T20s. They've got 3 ODIs coming up. And this is the Zach Foulkes party. Zach Foulkes, 33 runs, strike rate of 150. Only Blackcaps batter in these 2 games with a strike rate over 100 for the series. Also casually took 4 wickets at an average of 10 and 6.1 RPO. So this is the factual Zachary Foulkes. Facts Foulkes. He has a T20I batting record of 16.5 average, 143 strike rate. And with the ball, he's averaging 23, 7.8 RPO. T20 cricket overall, he's averaging 16 with the bat, strike rate of 132, and he's averaging 18 with the ball, RPO of 7.5. So if you don't know about Zach Foulkes yet, I got a question if you've actually been listening and reading the Niche Cache, because he's kind of the leading cricketer we have been talking about, and it was good to see that come to fruition a wee bit in Sri Lanka. Something that I was thinking about was that maybe Zach Foulkes is better than Nathan Smith. And I don't really think that's like a hot take because Zach Foulkes has been playing for the Blackcaps. And Nathan Smith is yet to play for the Blackcaps. So
he didn't play either of these games, did he?
He didn't
Nathan
play
Smith.
in these two games. So the only thing there, and I can see how other people might think that Nathan Smith is the main dude on the rise, is that he got the Blackcaps contract. But again, this is the thing about the contract. Zach Foulkes didn't get a contract, and Zach Foulkes has already played 4 T20s for Aotearoa. And he's got a T20 batting strike rate of 143, and he's averaging 23 with the ball. And these aren't like just random one-off performances from Zach Foulkes, because he averages 25 in every single bowling format. So that's something to watch out for. Like, I think we're going to see Nathan Smith will probably play in the ODIs against Sri Lanka. And I do believe that Nathan Smith, he got his contract because he's on the test radar. But if we've got one dude who's already played and impressing for the Blackcaps, and we've got another guy who's yet to play for the Blackcaps, I think it's pretty clear that Zach Foulkes is the dude folks need to learn about if they haven't already. And like, Zach Foulkes is just as good at batting as Nathan Smith. I don't think his stats quite show that at the moment, but the shots he's playing and the fact that he was asked to open the batting for Canterbury last summer in the Plunket Shield does point to a very strong all-round cricketer in Zach Foulkes. And I don't think he can't be that far off the test squad because he moves the ball. Like Zach Foulkes bowling with the red ball in Aotearoa, he would be a handful. Because like the only issue is that him and Will O'Rourke and Cole Jamieson, they all move the ball into the right-handers to the same extent, which means an absolute shitload. But Zach Foulkes does have a bit more variety. He's got the bouncer. Although, as we've talked about, Zach Foulkes on his Cricinfo profile, he is described as a tall, hit-the-deck fast bowler. He's not tall. He hits the deck, but he's not a fast bowler either. So two of the things there aren't factual. Because he's kind of just average height, and he bowls 132 to 135 k's per hour, which is fast enough given his action generates a bit more bounce and hurry the batsman upness. So that's Zach Foulkes, and he's had a pretty good T20 series. I'd say he was the best Blackcap in that series overall with bat and ball. Mitch Hay, I thought, was pretty damn good as a wicketkeeper. Like, he's a skillful wicketkeeper. I think his wicketkeeping ability is international cricket caliber.
I think he had like 7 dismissals in the second game, didn't he? Defending a small total as well, which is nuts.
Yep, so
it's
that
like
was
5
useful.
catches and a stumping. Like, that's good wicket keeping, you know?
That is useful. He has, however, had 5 scores below 5 in his last 6 innings. So this is Mitch Hay.
Less useful.
This is Mitch Hay batting this summer. 0, 2, 0, 20, 0, 3. So I think Mitch Hay's a very good batter. We've talked about that before. He's got a fantastic batting record as far as averaging 46 in first-class cricket and a T20 strike rate of 145, but he has not had a good start to the summer with the bat. The other dude I'm interested in here is Josh Clarkson, because I think Josh Clarkson has a fantastic opportunity along with Zach Foulkes and obviously Mitch Hay, who's the main wicketkeeper. I think Josh Clarkson's a dude to watch out for in the middle order. He had a score of 24, which is in the second game when they got rolled for not many. So he kind of salvaged that innings. And he hasn't quite had a moment, like a dominant moment in international cricket yet. So again, Josh Clarkson, he has played 11 games for New Zealand. And he's not as good a bowler as Nathan Smith. He might not be, if he might not even be as good a batter as Nathan Smith. But he's played 11 games for New Zealand. Like, this is the thing that we need to, like, this is like the nuance required when you're looking into these matters. Yes, Nathan Smith has a contract. Josh Clarkson might have a contract. Who knows? Who cares? But he's played 11 games. That's the most important thing. Who is playing for New Zealand? Do not assess New Zealand cricket depth by contracts. Assess it by who is playing for New Zealand in cricket games, because that's ultimately the most important thing. And Josh Clarkson is basically Mr. 30 average. He's averaging, these are his batting averages going from long form to short form. 28.9, 28.7, 27.4. These are his bowling averages from long form to short form. 35.9, 26.9, 31.6. So none of those are elite. None of those are above 45. None of those are below 25. But for an all-rounder, they're all around 30. And that's pretty decent for a kind of middle-order hitter and a seamer who can bowl you 5 to 6 overs a game. He just hasn't quite done a whole lot for New Zealand at the moment, and I'm curious to see what he can do in the ODIs, because I believe that's his best format, and he did have a nice little gritty knock in the second T20. So we've got the ODIs starting Wednesday night in Sri Lanka. Players who didn't play in the T20s, we didn't get Dean Foxcroft and we didn't get Nathan Smith. Lockie Ferguson's now out injured. So what does the little old nation of Aotearoa do? We just call up another fast seam bowler and Adam Milne. We have options. We have different types of cricketers. We lose a veteran express bowler. We bring in another veteran express bowler. This is Aotearoa cricket. You got any quick takes on Blackcaps in Sri Lanka?
Well, Ferguson out, Milne in, not a contract between them. So there's another, another point to your idea. Lockie Ferguson, one of the world's weirdest hat tricks in that second game as well, like spanning 2 overs and just some little bit strange dismissals. Like one's a little dink one behind to down leg side, and there was the first one where it's like they thought it was a bump ball, but it very clearly wasn't a bump ball, and then it took ages for them to realize that actually that's just a clean cut wicket. But yeah, Lockie Ferguson chucking himself in the record books there with a hat trick and then immediately getting injured. That's the Lockie Ferguson experience for you. Yeah. I don't even think he played the first game. So he just bowled 4 overs, took a hat trick, helped his team get victory. I think they gave him man of the match for that as well, because that was quite an important hat trick. It was not just a little sort of gimmicky thing at the end of a game that doesn't affect the result. Like he took key wickets to help the Blackcaps defend a small total. It might have, I think I saw it was like the lowest score they've successfully defended in a T20 international, which is, let's take that as well. There you go. That's something. There's a nice little, battle in Blackcaps again. They're fighting through in these conditions. A bit more of what we saw in the Test series against India. So some nice stuff in there. It's T20, so it's going to be a little bit volatile in general. You're going to have lose one, win one kind of thing. That's nothing crazy. We'll see how they go in the ODI stuff, though, because I think you'll probably see Nathan Smith more so here. And I don't know. I've seen people talking about the possibility of Nathan Smith getting a Test debut coming up. There was because there was the weird little fact where he might have gone from T20 debut, ODI debut, and then if he plays against England Test debut in the space of 2 weeks or something like that, no formats to all formats in such a space of time. He didn't play T20s though, so that's out of that's gone now. That's out the gate now. But I think we'll see him in the ODIs, but I don't think we'll see him in the test matches necessarily. I think there's an established group of test guys, and I think, as you say, like comes down to what you might just pick Zach Foulkes instead of Nathan Smith as well. Like there's no reason to think that Smith is ahead of Foulkes in the test picking order when neither of them have played before. So it's not like there's any existing kind of stuff to go by there. There's maybe even Mike Clarkson, who might even be a consideration. I don't know. Like we don't know what they would do with that when if they wanted to pick another player in that position. We've been dealing with spinning all rounders for a little while, so the idea of a seam bowling all rounder. I suspect Smith would probably be top of that, but there's not necessarily something that it's not something we have evidence on yet because that hasn't happened. But yeah, it should be a nice ODI series. I look forward to seeing some of these dudes actually get to bowl like 10 overs in a game, not just 4 when everyone's, it makes a little bit of a difference. Yeah, I also, who was the, Glenn Phillips. Yeah, Glenn Phillips was the other one I had written down that I wanted to shout out because, like, comes in, bowls the last over, defends the total, 3 wickets in there, smacks some sixes when he needs them. Even in the tour where there's weren't a lot of runs in that little series, bowls good overs now in all formats of cricket and is the best fielder in the world. Like he's just wherever they, and he's the other thing about him is he's one of the guys backing up from that test squad as well. There's a hardiness to that too.
Just fact checking you here a little bit. Glenn Phillips didn't hit a 6, and Lockie Ferguson only bowled 2 overs. So Lockie Ferguson got player
2
of the
overs and a
match
hat trick. Okay,
for bowling 2 overs. Plunket Shield cricket. So we had the only Blackcaps who I don't think are playing Plunket Shield at the moment are Tim Southey and Will O'Rourke. What do they both do? They both bowl seam. So I think that is little rest for them, but we do have Matt Henry playing for Canterbury. These games are ongoing. So we've got Canterbury versus Northern Districts. We've got Otago versus Central Districts. We've got Auckland versus Wellington. Wellington is the first place for my notebook because Logan van Beek has just hit a 50. He's on 58 not out at the time of recording, and he took a fifer in the first innings. Overnight, I was thinking that Logan van Beek is the best cricketer in Aotearoa right now. And then he scored 58 not out. So I'm gonna plant my flag there. I'm gonna say Logan van Beek is the best cricketer in New Zealand right now. Because he's taking wickets, he's scoring runs, and he is an absolute demon in the field. I believe he scored 4 trophy runs as well. Let me double check what Logan van Beek did in the Ford Trophy to start the summer. Logan van Beek with the bat, he scored a 50. 69 runs at a strike rate of 81. Logan van Beek with the ball, 5 wickets and an average of 33. So that's solid. That's a solid start to Ford Trophy. And then Logan van Beek starts Plunket Shield with a 5 and a 58 not out. So I think Logan van Beek is the best cricketer, Dutch international, but I'm going to, let me say he's the best cricketer in domestic cricket right now. I'll just tweak that a little bit to give respect to the Blackcaps. But Logan van Beek is an international cricketer. So I don't want to tweak it too much. And he is doing the most as an all-rounder. So I'm actually going to tweak it back, and I'm going to stand on my business there and say he is the best cricketer in Aotearoa. Shout out Logan van Beek, the one and only Dutch freak. The other 2 notes that I have here. We had Matt Fisher joining Christian Clark in the Northern District seam attack. Matt Fisher didn't play any Ford Trophy games, despite one-day cricket being his best format, and Christian Clark started the Plunket Shield with 4 wickets. So Christian Clark took 4 wickets in the first innings for Northern Districts. Matt Fisher took 2, and they were both better than Scott Kugelheim and Neil Wagner. And I think we are entering a phase where Christian Clark definitely, Matt Fisher maybe if he's playing consistently for Northern Districts, but I reckon those 2 Folks need to know about them because they're better bowlers than Scott Klugewein and Neil Wagner right now. Christian Clark was right up there with Nathan Smith as one of the best domestic seamers last season, and he's Northern's best bowler, I reckon, right now. And if he's doing that, you need to know about him. And we got Matt Fisher coming in with a few wickets. Let me just offer you their career bowling statistics because I think they're pretty damn good off the top of my head. Matt Fisher bowling averages, long form to short form, 26.5, 24.2, 36. Christian Clark bowling averages, long form to short form, 28.6, 24.9, 30.3. Christian Clark, 23 years old. Matt Fisher, 25 years old. Matt Fisher bowls heat. Christian Clark, bit more of a hit the decky. He is what Cricinfo describes Zach Foulkes as. He's actually quite tall. He hits the deck. I don't know if he bowls that fast, but he's taller, but he has a similar hit the decky type of style. The last note here about the first round of Plunket Shield is Bevon Jacobs playing for Auckland. Now, he scored runs in this game for Auckland, 79 runs at a strike rate of 75. And Bevon Jacobs has played every game for Auckland, I believe, this season. Bevon Jacobs, who made his T20 and one-day debut for Canterbury last summer as a very powerful lower order, middle to a lower order hitter. And that is evident in his T20 batting record of an average of 33 and a strike rate of 189. I repeat, a batting strike rate of 189 for a 22-year-old. Then he goes to Auckland and he plays Ford Trophy. Every game of Ford Trophy. Don't know if he did a whole lot. He had scores of 19 not out, 7 and 3 not out. Then he makes his Plunket Shield debut and he hits 75. And he's not necessarily whacking it. He's got a strike rate of 75. He had 3 sixes, 10 fours, off 100 balls. But he's batting like 6 or 7. He's batting 7 and he's showing that he can play in every format. And that's a very notable development when we're forecasting Bevon Jacobs and what he is capable of. You can go top tier and I'll offer some undercover Kiwi cricketers. So at the top tier, give me your 3 favourite New Zealand cricketers. And to help get the ball rolling for you, I imagine Glenn Phillips is going to be in there.
You would imagine correctly. I think most people should have Glenn Phillips in their top 3 if that's the case. I mean, he's genuinely the most exciting player going around. So, yeah, I would have GP there. I would have. Trying to think like how this sort of thing is. I guess it's the players who, like, when they're batting, you pay a little bit more attention or you feel a bit more invested in them scoring runs, and same deal with them taking wickets. So Kane Williamson would still have to be there.
Just more fun. You have more fun when they're playing cricket.
Yeah. Phillips, Williamson, and I probably should pick a bowler to be nice and reflective.
You should just pick whoever you think gives you the most fun.
That's what I'm trying to think.
Well, you're thinking bowlers, there's some dudes who whack sixes, like Tim Southey's a great whacker. You know, he whacks the odd 6.
He does. That is a fair point. And Tim Southey's probably high on that list because I feel like I've spent a lot of time defending him lately. Like, I feel like his reputation is not what it the reputation people have of him is not accurate for a guy who is one of our top wicket takers, second top wicket taker in history. I think he is now. I think he's got. Now, he might not quite have caught Daniel Vettori in Test matches, but he's on the way, and he's doing this in all formats as well. And you're right, he slugs a mean 6. Yeah, why not? I'm gonna be a little bit contrarian with it. And I'm gonna say Tim Southey is number 3 because I I, he is an Aucklander as well, so there's that aspect too. I guess I gotta be respectful in that manner as well. So,
I'd
Cam
go.
Williamson, Glenn Phillips, Tim Southee.
I'd go Big War. Big War's my favorite,
Yeah, I
one of my
thought
favorite
about
Kiwi
him. I
cricketers, so
was
he
up
would be
there.
in my mix. For the more undercover lads, I've got five. So we got Zach Foulkes, Luke Georgeson, Otago captain, Christian Clark, just talked about him, Logan van Beek, just talked about him, and Brett Hampton. Like Brett Hampton, he's definitely up there as one of my favorite domestic cricketers. Just smashes the ball, very good seam bowler as well. So those are my top five favorite cricketers below the top tier, second tier, right now. And we'll just update the Plunket Shield because we'll see where. Oh no, this is a good time for the computer to shit the pants. We'll see if old mate Logan van Beek is still not out. He is now 64 not out of 98 deliveries. So shout out to Logan van Beek, and Peter Younghusband's scoring runs as well. That's what I'm saying. Like Peter Younghusband's a very good cricketer, good fielder, good bowler, and scores a few runs down the order for Wellington. Oh, I can't big up Peter Younghusband in that regard and not big up Addy Ashok, who's a very good young leg spinner, and he also added a few runs, 25 runs off 70 deliveries down the order for Auckland. And may I add another thing? Logan van Beek is 64 not out in a game where Devon Conway scored 36 runs off 95 deliveries, Rachin Ravindra was dismissed for 7, and Tommy Blundell scored 6. That's what Logan van Beek is up to. So shout out Logan van Beek. You've got the prestigious honour of one of my top 5 favourite cricketers of the second tier right now. Few caveats there, but that's all right. It's a distinguished honour nonetheless. Let's finish with some rugby league. So we had the Pacific Championships wrapped up, and I'll offer some thoughts here, and then we'll get into some Kiwi-NRL, NRLWahine news and signings, because that will set the agenda for the summer. So what I'll do over the summer, every podcast, I'll just drop a few Kiwi-NRL, NRLWahine thoughts, some signing news, some promotions, some interesting pockets. Obviously, it's the off season for rugby league. But we still will have a few bits and pieces every podcast for you. And of course, we've got the bonus podcast coming up on Thursday where we will be digesting and debriefing the full round of Plunket Shield. Well, the first 3 days at least, because Thursday will be day 4 of those games, and any other bits and pieces that do appear. Obviously, the Blackcaps are playing their ODIs, so we'll be talking about that, as well as anything else as well. No, it's international window coming up in the big leagues of football, right?
For the men, yeah. The men and women international windows don't overlap. I think there might be one more women's international window before the end of the year, but the football Ferns don't have games. If they do, if there isn't one, well, they wouldn't be playing anyway. So but the All Whites are on this upcoming week. They got a game on Friday, game on Monday. They're playing Vanuatu and Samoa, both in New Zealand. One of them's at Hamilton, one of them's at Mount Smart. Yeah, Mount Smart Stadium. Yet another event at Mount Smart Stadium. Those jokers are keeping very busy these days. Eddie Vedder in the Pearl Jam concert did apologize at one point to the groundskeeper for the Warriors, but he should have apologized to Auckland FC and the All Whites who are actually using the ground right now. I don't think he quite realized that. But at least he didn't say up the wires or anything like that. So we were right. It was, we move on.
But you haven't got the commentary gigs for tough matchups against Vanuatu and
would have done
Samoa?
it if they'd asked me. I would have
That's
done
right,
it if they'd
right.
asked me. But these are World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah, it's all right.
So the Confederation's in charge.
That's
so
right.
I'm not involved.
Rightio. So rugby league. So we will be talking a bit of All Whites on the bonus podcast as well. We've got the Pacific Championships. Tonga lost to Australia, and the thing I was thinking about here is that there's not a lot of Tongans who played junior footy in Aotearoa in this team right now. So the only dudes who played junior rugby league in Aotearoa, we've got Tui Lolohea, he's a Marist junior. Saliva Havili, Manurewa junior. Jason Taumalolo, Papakura, and Oda Huhu junior. And in the final against Australia, we had Siwa Wong, who was a Burnham junior and a Manurewa junior, I believe. And we also had Satili Tupanuia, who had played the games previously and was 18th man against Australia. He is a Marist junior. So Tonga had Tui Lolohea and Tupanuia as Marist juniors in their team, but that's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the 18 who played junior footy in Aotearoa. There is a difference there because the 3 katoas have connections to Aotearoa, but they're not necessarily the strongest connections to Aotearoa. I don't care where a player is born. I don't think anyone else should care where a player is born either. It doesn't determine your nationality. It doesn't determine your culture. Yes, it can open doors for you. So someone like Tim Pringle, Kiwi cricketer, he was born in Netherlands, he can play for Netherlands. Sure, you're a rugby league player, you're born in Jamaica, you can't crack the Kiwis, you're going to play for Jamaica. That's all right. But I think the place where you're born is a bit overstated, because you might be a Samoan who was born in Malawi, but you grew up in New Zealand. It doesn't make you...
I'm pretty sure Alex Riffel was born in Switzerland, so...
He's not Swiss.
Exactly.
This person that I just made up is not Malawian. So this is just another one of my little old man complaining moments, which we try not to do. We try not to complain. And it's not a complaint. It's just something we all need to be aware of and respectful of, I reckon, because people just assume, oh, you're born there, you must be from that country. Oh, you're a cricketer who was born in South Africa, but now you're playing cricket in New Zealand, so you must be another one of these South African cricketers who has come to New Zealand to play cricket. No, I was just born in South Africa and I moved here when I was 2. You know, those type of situations. All of which is to say, Sione Katoa, Tongan winger, he was born in Hamilton, and that's kind of it. Isaiah Katoa, he was born and he spent a few years in Wellington, so shout out to him. He did spend a few years in Wellington before moving to Sydney. But he is eligible for New South Wales, so he must have moved to Sydney before he turned whatever, 13, 14. And Iliasa Katoa only came to New Zealand to play first 15 rugby for Tamaki College. So the 3 katoas have connections to Aotearoa, but they aren't Kiwi-NRL juniors because they didn't play junior rugby league in New Zealand. And aside from maybe some super under 5s rugby, I don't think Isaiah Katoa has played much junior rugby in Aotearoa either. So that is to say, this Tongan team, the veterans have the hardy connections to Aotearoa as Kiwi-NRL juniors, but there's a lot of them actually Australian. They're Australian Tongans, Tongan Australians. Lehigh Hopeware, Daniel Tupou, Paul Alamoti, Tolotau Kula, Adam Whanua Blake, Haumole Olakawatu, Sonny Luke, Taniela Paseka, Kion Koloamatangi. Most of those dudes are born and raised in Australia. So that's the majority of this Tongan squad. I just found that interesting. It is, I think it's a slight change in the makeup of the Tongan team. But that's just something I found interesting. Someone else I found interesting. 27 debutants for New Zealand since the last World Cup. So the last 2 years, there's been 27 debutants for New Zealand. 11 debutants for the Kiwis. Matthew Tomoko, Griffin Neame, Leo Thompson, Fa'amanu Brown, Keanu Kinney, Will Warbrick, Phoenix Crossland, Nofahu Wai, Jordan Ricky, Casey McLean, Aaron Clark. 16 debutants for the Kiwi Ferns. Leanne Tafunga, Angelina Tiakaranga Katoa, Ash Quinlan, Amelia Pasikala, Tyler King, Najvada George, Jasmine Foganvini, Anessa Biddle, Brooke Anderson, Shell Robbins, Reti, Capri Paikau, Tiana Davison, Alexis Tauihi, Gail Broughton, Mackenzie Wiki, Brooke Talataina. That is important to remember if we're assessing New Zealand Rugby League. I'll get into the Kiwi Ferns. I think ultimately it was let's go with average Pacific Championships. I don't want to go below average because there are a lot of debutants. We've got to be realistic. Like, it wasn't exactly a splendid Pacific Championship for the Kiwi Ferns, Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns either. So we'll just say 2.5 out of 5 stars, 5 out of 10 type of situation. Like, it was all good. Ultimately, 27 new players for the Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns combined over the last 2 years. That is reflective of Aotearoa's rugby league situation. And I think it's a very good building blocks for New Zealand Rugby League moving forward. And I did mention the Kiwi Ferns there. So the thing that I found a little bit stink was the lack of attacking impetus against Australia. And I combine that with shrewd tactical footy from Australia. Ultimately, Australia is still the big donnies of International Rugby League. Shout out to them. Congratulations. You're the best rugby league teams in the world. If we're updating my rankings, I think women, Australia, and then New Zealand is on a tier below Australia. They're not level with Australia. They are on a tier below Australia. I think that is like a definitive thing right now. And then it's kind of everyone else. Men's Rugby League, Australia's on their own tier. And then I'm putting Tonga, New Zealand, England on the second tier. And then we've got the other teams below that. Samoa, PNG, Fiji. I think that's the best third tier. And then you've got some other teams below that. So credit to Australia. Like, once again, they showed how Aussies do their rugby league very well. The Kangaroos were tactically better than Tonga. And the Jillaroos were tactically, strategically better than the Kiwi Ferns. One of those wrinkles was how effective they were at just targeting Tyler King on the right side of the Kiwi Ferns defensive line. And they just kind of steamrolled their way up the field, targeting Tyler King, quick play the ball, bang, another runner straight around the ruck, get down the field. And this isn't like rocket science, but you can understand how difficult it is to defend your try line when you've been going back 50 meters first. That's what the Kiwis struggled with against Tonga. You're going backwards, and then you got to defend your try line. That's a very different situation to the opposition starts their set of 6 or 20 meters out, and you're defending your try line right there. If you've been going back for 4 tackles and then you got to defend your try line, good luck. It's going to be tricky. And I kind of saw Australia just do that to the Kiwi Ferns a few times. I think Gail Broughton and Tyler King are the long-term Kiwi Ferns halves combo, and that's going to suit the Kiwi. That's going to set up the Kiwi Ferns very well. What do I have here? So, if we combine line breaks, tries, try assists, tackle breaks, and I'll even include a few offloads if it suits my argument, you know, because that's just what you got to do.
That's how stats work. Yeah.
That's how stats work. Tyler King and Gale Broughton, they combined in 2 games against Australia for 19 missed tackles and 9 positive plays, positive attacking stats, which is 6 tackle busts and 3 offloads. So 2 games against Australia, Gale Broughton and Tyler King had 19 missed tackles, which was driven mainly by the second game. Gale Broughton 6 missed tackles, Tyler King 7 missed tackles, which is okay if you're producing a lot of attack. And they only had 6 tackle busts and 3 offloads. No try assists, no tries, no line breaks. So that's like fair play. It was their first time together as an international halves combination, and this is where the Kiwi Ferns can build on top of. But ultimately against Australia, you got to score some points. Like, I'd rather the Kiwi Ferns step into that kind of helter-skelter Wellington Phoenix woman mode, because I think they scored 4 points in 2 games. And they conceded 38. They were shut out in the first game, scored 4 points in the second game. So they try hard. And this is the thing, like, Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns, they got that baseline of trying hard, attitude, intensity, which should be always there. But anyone who's watched the Kiwis, especially over the last, what have we got, 30 years? You never really knew if the Kiwis were going to show up. I'm confident in saying that right now the Kiwis and the Kiwi Ferns have this baseline of, you know, they're going to show up and have a crack. To the extent where they didn't show up and have a crack against Tonga, but they found a way to, like, there's still enough mana in that team to stay in the contest. So the baseline's there, but they haven't, especially the Kiwi Ferns, they haven't got the clinical execution to really trouble Australia. And that's their biggest issue, which is evident in a lack of, like, attacking counting stats for the halves combination. And a lot of missed tackles. Like, if you're a half, I don't think you should have more missed tackles than your line breaks, tackle breaks, try assists, tries, and offloads combined. But that's just where the Kiwi Ferns are at, and I think overall, I think it's kind of a solid reality check for New Zealand Rugby League. Just like, hey, you might have been getting a bit too big for your boots, talking to myself. You know, maybe just chill out a wee bit. I think the Kiwi Ferns got put in their place by Australia, and ultimately the Kiwis lost to Australia as well, so they got put in their place by Australia as well. But I don't think that's unique to New Zealand. That's more of an Australia just being like, we're the big dogs of International Rugby League. We're just going to put everyone else in their place, which they should do after both teams finished the year last year with losses to New Zealand. With that said, the biggest win for New Zealand Rugby League was Casey McLean choosing New Zealand over New South Wales. Like, again, you just got these things that just like scratch, like itching. Don't want to complain about it, but I'll say it. Andrew Voss, he like specifically highlighted that Leo Thompson he was like, oh, it's a big moment for Leo Thompson doing the haka alongside James Fisher, Harrison, Joseph Tapine. I was like, he's been doing that for every haka, you know, like, He did it for his debut last year, and every haka he's done since then, he has been the leader of the haka behind Fisher, Harris, and Tapine. Shout out to Gail Broughton. She was the leader of the Kiwi Ferns haka. Loved her stuff there. Kiwis are a bit different where Fisher Harris leads in. I'm pretty sure he's Ngāpui, and when he rolls his eyes back, it just feel like I can feel that he is summoning the energy, the mana of his ancestors, because that's probably my favorite haka thing right now. And I don't remember Fisher Harris doing it last year. But when he's just standing there and he rolls his eyes back and you just see the whites of his eyes, I think it's my favorite haka moment ever. And this is going to sound very weird, but great tongue control.
It did sound weird, but I know what you mean.
When they do their pukana, it's like, wow. And when you got the tongue control with the pukana that they have, and you're rolling your eyes back, that's just peak haka for myself. What was my point? My point was complaining, which I try not to do. But my point, so all the headlines after this game is like 18-year-old Kiwi, Casey McLean scores 4 tries on debut. All of which is true. A lot of the stuff that I've seen overlooks the fact that he chose New Zealand over State of Origin. He's born in Sydney. He grew up in Sydney. His father was a very good rugby league player in Aotearoa, but he was born and raised in Australia. He played New South Wales under-19s a few months ago. The Aussies don't seem to want to recognise that he chose to represent New Zealand over State of Origin. Now, he's not going to play State of Origin this year, and that was probably a factor in the Kiwis selecting him in the squad so they can get him in the mix quickly and efficiently. But Casey McLean chose to make his New Zealand debut. He chose to be in the Kiwis squad. He was not guaranteed any footy in that team. He only played this test because Will Warbrick was out injured. Casey McLean chose to be in the Kiwis squad ahead of any future State of Origin footy. Given that, as a Kiwi, half Pākehā, half Palangi from Aotearoa, given how I feel whenever New Zealand are the victims of eligibility situations, we also benefit from many, and that's cool. But everyone loves to talk up like, oh, this player chose, like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, he chose to play for Samoa ahead of the Kiwis. It's like, cool, that's true. But the one time someone chooses to represent New Zealand over State of Origin, it's not really delivered with that same energy. And this is important for me because Jack Howarth, understandably, he turned down the Kiwis to pursue State of Origin. Isaiah Katoa doesn't want to represent New Zealand because he's got Tonga and he can represent New South Wales. Like, players do not choose to represent New Zealand over State of Origin. It doesn't happen. Until there's an 18-year-old phenom who does it. And if we're comparing Casey McLean to Jack Howarth, well, he's 18 years old. He's younger than Jack Howarth. And he just performed very well in his Kiwis debut. So maybe he might be better than Jack Howarth. Am I bummed about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck choosing Samoa? No, because we got an 18-year-old Casey McLean. Am I bummed that Dean Mariner chose to represent Samoa? No, we got 18-year-old Casey McLean. Like, Casey McLean has just fixed everything. He's made me not worry about missing out on any eligibility situations. And it's also it's another reminder that Aussies they're very specific in the details they like to highlight. And a lot of the coverage was 18-year-old Kiwis debutant scores 4 tries. They do not mention how big a deal it is that an 18-year-old phenom chose to represent New Zealand over State of Origin. And I'm pretty sure we would have talked about Casey McLean when the squad was announced. Like, that was interesting to start with. And then he makes his debut, and you're just like, this dude's a freak. We talked about it on the podcast when the squad was announced because he scored a try against your Dragons, and that try was freaky.
Yeah, he did.
And then he scores freaky tries for New Zealand. It's like, wow, what a moment. So, yeah, do you have any thoughts on Casey McLean?
No, because that seems to be a nice little encapsulated idea. However, I do have a thought that stems off of that, because I was reading New Zealand Rugby League did a thing when they said he was going to, because it was Will Warbrick got injured today. So Casey McLean comes in for Will Warbrick. And there was a little article on their thing about, like, you know, youngster Casey McLean to debut against PNG, blah, blah. And I read that at the time when I did, and it was like, I wish more sporting organizations did this kind of stuff where they just, half the article is just laying out his heritage and giving the full background. So there was a whole thing about his dad's career and how he played against Australia for like a rest of the world team in the 90s, and big man for like Waitakere or something like that, playing the local league here. And they also mentioned that he's first cousins with Joe Chan, who plays for the Melbourne Storm. Was Joe Chan one of those, was it him who was along with Howarth last year? There's like a couple of dudes playing NZA.
Yeah, so Joe Chan played for New Zealand A last year. His dad, Alex Chan, played for the Kiwis before.
So I wonder how much that lays into the idea as well. Like, his cousin made a similar, because Joe Chan is the same A, where he can play for a couple of countries, I think.
So that same like announcement you're referencing, it says his younger brother, Tiaki Chan, has already played for France. So the Chan family, they're like from Australia, Sydney, but Alex Chan, the father, got a job with Catalans in France. So then they grew up in France. And then Joe Chan came back to play for the Melbourne Storm. But to what you're saying, Willie McLean, the father of Casey and Jesse McLean, he was in the Marist Team of the Century. So Marist Rugby League, Team of the Century, and here's some other players that are in that Team of the Century. Francis Mali, Jerome Ropati, David Fusitua, Motu Tony, Roy Asatasi, and Sonny Bill Williams. Respect to some of the older folks who I didn't really know about in that Marist Team of the Century, but Willie McLean was viewed by Marist Rugby League as being in the same class as Francis Mali Ropati, Motu Tony Asatasi, Sonny Bill Williams, and Fusitua. So he's obviously good. But one other thing here about Casey McLean, when I did the squad preview, we talked about this before and I'll repeat it. When he was talking about his debut for the Panthers, he said, quote, "Running out with the likes of James Fisher, Harris, Moses, Leota, players I used to watch growing up. I couldn't believe I was looking either side of me and I was running out next to them. It was just surreal. I can't wait to do it again." He could have mentioned anyone in that Panthers team.
Yeah, he didn't say Cleary and Yo or whoever, you know. Like the two Kiwi front rowers.
Then NRL.com, they did a nice yarn about him, which does not mention anything to do with State of Origin or him choosing to represent New Zealand over State of Origin, just says he's from Sydney. He says, "It was a dream come true. Playing with the likes of Sean Johnson, Peter Hiku, and Joey Tapine, it was a dream come true." So shout out Peter Hiku. He's making dreams come true there. So shout out to him.
Well, Peter Hiku's the kind of player you making dreams come true. He's the kind of player you mention in that kind of he's the type of name you'd throw out there if you genuinely grew up like supporting the Kiwis when they were playing You know, he's the guy who's played in a lot of big Kiwis moments and been around for a while, and veteran status. Sean Johnson probably the same, although Johnson did have a big resurgence last year, which didn't follow on into this year, but still helped his reputation a fair bit. So like, I think that's telling as well. Like the fact that Peter Hiku's getting the name check there, I think that tells you this isn't a guy who just decided one day. I think this is a guy who probably always was leaning towards Aotearoa instead of Australia.
But he played for New South Wales under 19s like in June or July. And
I do pick up the phone when they call,
That was under 19 footy, and he would have turned 18. So the reason I go hard on this is because the New Zealand, in the context of state of origin and Australia, like Kalen Ponga, we can go Tony Carroll. You can go through the list. James Tamo. These dudes do not choose New Zealand over state of origin. It doesn't happen until Casey McLean makes this decision. Who's to say if this changes anything? But you got to respect Casey McLean. Like, we love Aotearoa, and Casey McLean loves Aotearoa more than us because he made a decision to represent Aotearoa ahead of state of origin. He's not necessarily, like, the Australia stuff, who cares about Australia? It's state of origin that is always the lure for these players. So respect to Casey McLean, and praise Jah that Casey McLean is playing for Aotearoa, because he is really, really good at rugby league, and good stuff. All right, quickly, I've got to drop some Kiwi-NRL notes. First of all, Salesi Ataata has moved from the Sharks to the Rabbitohs. Otahuhu Jr., who was part of a very good Sharks Kiwi-NRL crew, he's now with the Rabbitohs on like a train and trial summer situation. So watch out for Salesi Ataata with the Rabbitohs. Cowboys have promoted Jeremiah Matautia. I think it's actually Matautia. He is an Otara forward. And Henry Teutau, another Maris Jr. from Auckland. They have promoted them to the summer training with the Cowboys squad. And the Cowboys also have Mason Barber, who is from Kaikoui. And he made the Australian schoolboys team this year, which continues a 4-year streak of a Kiwi-NRL junior playing in the Australian schoolboys team. Off the top of my head, it goes Dean Mariner, Keanu Kinney, John Whinianga Nofo, and then Mason Barber. So watch out for Mason Barber. All his highlights are over there. Lots of buzz about Mason Barber in Australia. He is with the Cowboys, and I'll be curious to see where he pops up next season. Then we have the Bulldogs. What country do the Bulldogs love?
They love this one.
They love this country. Almost as much as Casey McLean.
Almost. Not quite, but almost.
I don't know, because they're investing a lot of money in Aotearoa talent, so their money is where their mouth is.
But they didn't sign Peter Hiku. If they signed Peter Hiku, then that's right. They're on par.
The Bulldogs, so their NRLW squad is full of players from Aotearoa. And they have added Shaniece Monschau and Shaquaylah Mahakitau-Monschau. I believe Shaniece Monschau is the auntie and Shaquaylah Mahakitau-Monschau is the niece. They're both signed to the Bulldogs. And the Bulldogs NRLW squad has like 7 players from Aotearoa already. We have Alexis Tauihi, Angelina Tiakaranga Katoa, Ash Quinlan. 3 Kiwi Ferns in the Bulldogs NRLW squad straight away. They also have Saracen Oliver, who is Petone Jr. from Wellington. So the Bulldogs NRLW squad already has a player from Wainui and Petone. 2 wahine from Wellington, straight away. Now they add Shaniece Monschau, who she was playing for Mount Albert in the last few years before going to the Bulldogs system. And then you've got, I think she went to Waitakere College, and Shaquaylah, she went to St. Peter's College in Cambridge. Shaquaylah played netball. She was in a New Zealand netball development training camp thingy-majig, alongside Serena Masanga, who's now playing with the Titans, and Summer Van Gelder, who has been in the Bulldogs system. Thing with the Bulldogs, the 3 players who are yet to play NRLW from Aotearoa, already in the NRLW squad, they all played for the Bulldogs this year in the New South Wales Women's Premiership. So that shows that the Bulldogs have already established a comprehensive women's recruitment program, developing those players and promoting them from within into the NRLW squad. Shout out to the Bulldogs. You love Aotearoa almost as much as Casey McLean, and maybe as much as we love Aotearoa as well. That is the Niche Cast for this week. Make yourself heard, make yourself known, pick up yourself. We appreciate your support and your eardrums and your eyeballs. Have a good time. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Cheer, cheer.